If you ever looked around at the life you've built, checked all the boxes, followed all the rules, and still felt off, like something important was left behind, you're not alone. Maybe your dreams got buried under routines. Maybe the success you were taught to chase doesn't quite fit anymore. Maybe you've quietly outgrown the version of yourself everybody else expects you to be. In today's conversation with Dean Taylor, you'll discover 3 shifts. First, reclaiming the dormant dreams you have, recognizing that it's not too late to return to what once has lit you up. Redefining success, letting go of the white knuckle model and aligning your action with your values, your voice, and your vision. And reaching out for support, embracing a community not as a weakness, but as a gateway to growth. That's what season 3 is all about. Building the right community around you so that you stop going it alone and start growing with others. And we begin here by reconnecting with yourself, because in order to build the kind of community that supports your rise, you must first bring your authentic self to the table. And that's the promise of Unsealing You, helping you rise from feeling stuck, silenced, or underestimated to boldly using your voice and owning your ambition and building a future that reflects your full potential. Let's get started. Thank you so much, Dean, for coming on to Unsealing You. I really appreciate you being here and your voice adding to this discussion of really dreaming and knowing that rediscovering your dormant dreams, because I hear from many of our listeners that they've always wanted to do something and they let the daily things in life, their daily work, their daily schedule, the actual habits that we've got going, pretty much disrupt those dreams, or those dreams get put back into the corner. And so now what we're doing is rediscovering our dormant dreams. And it takes courage. It takes courage to redefine success. And in talking with you, you've shared that many men are taught that success means powering through with no emotion, no doubt. And what I am wondering is what happens when that model starts to break. What early message did you internalize about masculinity and success, and what did you have to unlearn in order to feel fulfilled?
Well, that's a powerful question, and thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I have felt that in my life, that as a man, you go it alone. I'm the provider, I'm the breadwinner, I'm all these things, and that I have to just be strong and not allow emotion to get to me, so to speak, if that makes sense. I've felt that I needed to just, as you mentioned, just bare knuckle through it, dig in and just do it on my own. And I have come to realize that I need to have people in my life around me to help support me. And that's been a big transformation for me, and something that I have embraced. And as I've done so, I've learned that I can grow incrementally, just pushing on my own. But when I reach out and I have other people in my life, I can start taking, I call them like a quantum leap, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So what was the moment that you decided this bare knuckling approach was not going to work and it stopped working for you? What happened?
Yeah. When I was about a little over 2 years ago, I felt that I was really just kind of stuck. I'd had this vision for my life, what I was going to be doing, how things were going to be going in life, and I read the Miracle Morning book, and some people maybe have read that book and go, I'm not a morning person. And I don't say that you have to be more. My point is not being a morning person, but it began a transformation inside of me to say, I don't have to be locked into living this, what my own word, I call it like a life of mediocrity. I felt like I was at this point in my life where I just needed to be grateful for what I had done and sort of ride off into the sunset, so to speak, and not really. I was too old. Life had sort of passed me by. I was at that point in my life where I should just be content with what I had done. I had achieved a level of success in my life, which I'm very grateful for, but I was left feeling just unfulfilled. And I started thinking about, if I were to just looking ahead in my life, both my parents have passed away, and I think that had a big impact on me in thinking about, would I be content just letting my life be what it was and not really pursuing dreams? I have kids that are starting college and have told them throughout their life, go live your dream, go do whatever you want to do, go do that thing. And I started asking myself, am I following my own advice? If someone were to ask me that, could I say? And I started really thinking about that, and going back to the miracle morning, just having a routine where I started to, it just kind of helped wake me up, not just physically in the morning, but I woke up emotionally and saw I have great potential, and I started thinking I have life experience that could really benefit people. And I had never really appreciated that about myself before. I thought, I've lived a whole life and I've lived a good life, and I need to be grateful and proud of that. I've worked hard for that experience. So,
And so, in thinking about your morning routines now, what they were, what's changed, and how did your new morning productivity rewire everything for you?
yeah, before I've always enjoyed the morning, so getting up in the morning wasn't an issue. But it was just chaotic. I just felt like I would just start my day without any real clear purpose or direction where I was, what I was growing. And so I had a lot of, you talk about rewiring your my mind. I've worked a lot on that and realized that I had some real limiting beliefs about myself in terms of what I was capable of doing, beliefs about my purpose in life, and the vision that I held for myself. And I think a lot of men my age have felt very similar to that. I've achieved a certain level of success, but I still have this feeling of gnawing in my chest of being unfulfilled, and understanding what that is and how to achieve clarity of purpose. And so that's something that I discovered. And I'll just share a quick story. My own father, I mentioned my parents passed away. My dad wanted to start a business, and I was so excited for him because he worked hard. He was a blue collar worker. He was going to do small engine repair. He got the training. I remember watching him take this little engine apart that he got and putting it back together again. And for whatever reason, I was young. I don't know why that didn't ever work out for him. But years later, just a few months before he passed away in 2018, we were having to clear out his house because he wasn't able to live on his own. My mom had since passed, or had passed away previously. And I found the manuals and the old engine that he had worked on, and we were putting them in the dumpster. And I had this thought, I'm throwing my dad's dream away. And then I started asking myself the same question: what am I doing with my dream, and where am I on the same path my dad was on? And so just that was kind of, I think for me, that was a real turning point in really thinking about what I wanted and where I was really headed and what I was going to allow myself. I was going to allow that same thing to happen to me, I guess.
That's a powerful story. It really resonates. And I feel often I'll talk with folks that say, hey, I have this dream of doing such and such. And my response is, hey, let me hook you up with this person, that person, this person, that person, so that you can talk it out and make sure that, well, not make sure, but just see if it aligns with the type of result that you want to provide to the world, and also give you a resource to make that thing a reality. And sometimes I find that these folks will begin to reach out, but then stop because just it either feels overwhelming or it just is so hard to manage both the dream and get started with the dream along with the daily life. So what would you say to someone who feels too overwhelmed to kind of stop, realign your morning routine, and really take a deep dive into that dream? Maybe they feel overwhelmed, or maybe they even feel it's too late in life. What would you say to them?
I've felt that. I've definitely felt that. And for what I would say for me, what I was feeling was, it was fear. I became very accustomed to my life, and it was familiar. And I think when we step outside of what we're familiar with, our brain wants to always protect us, right? I think that's one of its main jobs. And so I think when something feels unfamiliar, we start to feel this fear. And at least I felt that, and thought, oh, well, because I'm feeling that way, that must mean that I'm not doing something right. And what I came to realize is it was just it was because it was unfamiliar to me. Just a simple example, I always fold my arms a certain way, but if I fold my arms in the opposite way, that feels so weird. And it's not that it's wrong, it's just that it's unfamiliar. And so our brain starts to tell us, all you got to change that back. And so I would say if you're feeling overwhelmed and feeling fearful, I would say just understanding that feeling, that fear and unfamiliarity, it doesn't mean that it's wrong or it's you can't do that thing. It's just that it's unfamiliar. And I've learned since then by doing things that I felt were unfamiliar to me actually allowed me to experience the growth that I was seeking. And once that became the new norm for me, and as I pushed beyond that boundary and what I really felt like, okay, now this is my new familiarity zone. It became more natural, and it became natural, not just more. It became my natural state of feeling. So, and I would say one other thing that has really helped me uh, and shift my mind is being grateful, recognizing the abundance in my life. I think so much of when you feel the fear, it kind of generates these feelings of anxiety and lack in our lives, and it kind of just spirals down this path of, eventually leads to anxiety and just this feeling of being stuck. And when I started to really just think about being grateful and not just think about them, but part of my morning routine is I would start writing down why I felt grateful for that thing and what feelings did that evoke within me of appreciation. It just opened up my mind to see I have a lot in my life to really be grateful for. And it shifted my mind from being in a state of, oh, I lack all these things. I lack time. I lack relationships. I lack resources. I lack whatever. I could see I have things in my life. I have people. I have opportunity. I have relationships that I can leverage that will help me to get where I want to go.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So, going back to the original mindset in having to white knuckle it through, we always glorify the self made man. But real transformation, as you said, it was quantum transformation happens in relationships when you involve other people. So, how did you start building a support system that aligned with your values and your dormant dreams or vision?
Yeah, I'll just share another story. This is interesting. I was on a morning walk, and these thoughts were going through my mind about, well, just the lack and just trying to figure out life a bit. And so I was walking, and I had my phone in my hand, and I started thinking about how many versions of that phone I had had in my life. Over the course of my life. And I started looking at cars, and I thought, well, okay, well, this brand of car has been around for years, and that same model's been around for years, but yet that same model doesn't look the same as it does today. And so what my point was, and what my realization was, that all these things were not created by just one person. They were created by someone had a vision of that, but it would take other people to pull and make that thing actually a reality. And so it really struck me that there's nothing that I can see here, even in my room, everything. There was nothing that was created by one single person. It was all done by at least two people, someone that had the thought and someone that could actually make it happen. And so I started really realizing that my life is really about co-creation, and when we involve people in our lives, we can create and we can achieve way more than we can by ourselves. Like, I can't remember who said this, but I heard this recently, that if you want to go fast, go it alone, but if you want to go far, go with someone else, like, or something like that. That's the exact quote. Anyway, yeah, yes, that was just a moment of realization for myself. I thought it was just a powerful moment of, whoa, if I'm going to achieve what I want in life, I need to have people in my life and co-create. So one of the things I wanted to do in life was speak. When I've attended work presentations, or I've gone to even when I was young, I always thought, how can I be the person on stage? And it was just this feeling I've always had, and I had never done it. So I reached out to someone that I know, and he knew someone else that he knew that was a speaking coach, and I joined her mastermind group, which actually allowed you and I, to get connected. And so that was just taking a small step in just reaching out to someone else who was just ahead of me in where I wanted to be, has allowed me to do that. I actually had an opportunity back in March to speak on stage for the first time and give a keynote address. Something I thought I would not do, right? But it was just because I had put myself into a position with other people who could provide that opportunity, that thing was allowed to happen.
That's fantastic. So, what would you tell someone who feels isolated and isn't sure how to ask for help?
This is a great question. I've always thought people had to be like really charismatic to succeed. I thought only the people who are really outgoing and high energy
Mm.
ever really succeed in life. And I realized one of my superpowers is my ability to remain calm. And so I guess, if someone's feeling like they're not outgoing enough, or that they're too shy, because I definitely have related to that. When I was a young kid in school, I was actually counted absent in my elementary class because I was so quiet. My teachers, she came up to me and said, "When did you get here?" And I said, "I've been here all day." And she counted me absent. So I understand the feeling of fear, and feeling like, okay, I feel more comfortable being like, just with this speaker mastermind group that I'm a part of. I've just the relationships that I've been able to form there, and finding people that had the same desire created a connection. And
Mm.
so I would say, if you're feeling fearful about something like that, there are groups of people that have the same fears but have the same desire. And so when you get connected, it just, for me, that feeling of fear just sort of melted away when I actually just took the first step to say, okay, I'm going to put myself out there, I'm going to do this thing, and allow it to happen.
That's fantastic. So, how has your definition of networking changed over time?
Yeah, I think I used to think of networking as being this social event, and I had to kind of be this outgoing, charismatic.
Mm.
When I walk into a room, everyone just sort of is drawn to me, sort of thing. I thought that's how I always viewed it. It was this, and so it held me back from thinking. And so I used to think of networking as also as a way to. I was trying to seek out people who could help me. What I really started realizing was, when I go to an event, if I'm on the lookout for how I can help other people, because that's my natural tendency, is I want to help people. And so I thought, well, if I'm in a conversation and I know someone else in the group, I can be a connector. I can help others. So I try to approach it in that mindset or framework of, if I show up here, how can I help someone else and be a giver, versus always just trying to receive, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's change a little and talk about,
Yeah.
with that connection and being a connector, and how your networking experience changed. When you evolved, it creates a ripple effect outward into leadership, parenting, and legacy. I mean, speaking about your dad's dreams and putting the manuals in the dumpster, like, are you doing the same thing? That was a powerful story. How has your redefinition of success shaped how you lead today as a father, as a partner, and as a professional?
Oh, I love this. So I have a daughter that she and we haven't launched our podcast yet, but we have started recording a podcast together. And so it has been a really fun thing. And I've had all my children, my wife and I, we have 5 children, and they have come to me, all of them have come to me at different points and said, "You have inspired me to do things that I never thought I would do. You inspire me to do things and to believe in myself." And I thought, if that's the legacy I can leave for my kids, that is my ultimate, honestly, to leave that legacy. Because I just, like my daughter with this, I just shared just briefly, she went through a very dark time in her life. This, the one that we're doing the podcast with, she was in a very abusive relationship. And it's taken a lot of time to work through all of that, and pull out of that. But the reason I'm sharing that is that because, and she's told me this, is she's watched me transform my life. It helped her feel like she could also begin sharing her story, and seeing how she could transform and help other people who were in the same situation. And it's really, that has been so healing for her, and allowed her to make some huge leaps in her life. And so we had this idea a few months ago that, well, I have my life experience and I have life from my own perspective, and she has this other perspective, and thought, well, how powerful that could be if we were coming together and just sharing time together. So anyway, we recorded a couple of podcast episodes together, and plan to do that more. But I would say even in my own how I lead has changed. I have definitely I'm leading with more confidence and more clarity and purpose and direction in my own employment. And so I one thing I've learned about this journey of personal growth is that it has been interesting at work. We do these surveys where, and there's always these burnout scores, and people are always talking about how burned out they feel. And I've asked myself, well, I don't feel that way. And I totally 100% attribute it to the growth that I feel and the growth I've experienced over the last several years. And that's really come because I really defined my vision, what I desire, and my purpose. And that has provided me so much clarity in decisions I make and how I interact with people, how I lead my team, and how I'm leading in my own family.
So today, I always imagine me talking to my younger self. If you were to talk to your younger self, what would you say?
Wow. I would say to my younger self, the power of belief. I really learned that my belief in myself, the image that I've held about myself, and I've thought a lot about this. This is such a good question because I've thought where did some of these limiting beliefs for myself start? And how did where do they really come from? As I really look back over the course of my life, I've seen a lot of those come from, I shared the experience about being counted absent at school. I think that was one of my beliefs that I felt that, just that experience had an impact on me. I'll share another story that I know has impacted me. And as I analyzed and thought about my life, I realized how I let that experience change me. When I was about 6 or 7 years old, I would go out on my swing set in the mornings and I would swing. And the higher I would swing, the louder I would sing. I would sing one of my favorite country music songs that I heard my parents listen to all the time. And my mom one day when I went back in the house, I learned that she had been watching me out the kitchen window. And she made just a comment that I'm sure she would never remember, or no, it would never even think that it had the impact that it did on me. But she just said, kind of just chuckling, that I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, and I sang just like her. And I love my mom, and I'm not just talking bad about her, but it was the first time I thought, whoa, maybe I'm not very good at singing like I thought I was. I used to think of my swing set as my stage. Well, then it became a place where I just pretended I was going to do the same job my dad did. Not that that was bad, but my dream totally shifted from being this I was going to be on stage singing to I was going to work on drilling rigs and be like my dad and work really hard on doing that. I know I'm kind of wandered a little bit there, but I guess my point is that these beliefs that I think form early in life, and they just, what I realized, that they carry, so many of them carry through into our teen and adult years, and unless we become aware of them, and that's one of the keys I really found about my personal growth and transformation, is just being aware and seeing those opportunities for change and transformation in my own life. So the first step, I think, is always just becoming aware of those areas that you can change, that need to change in order to make the transformation that you're seeking.
And hence the rediscovering of dormant dreams and helping you to open those back up and go forward. So as we wrap up this main part, and before we go into the rapid questions for the insider group,
Yeah.
and that would be the spark and also the unsealed group, what are some of the leftover thoughts that are in your head that you would like to share with the Unsealing You audience? And if someone wants to work with you, how would they find you?
Thank you. People could find me on social media, Instagram, Dean Taylor Official. My website is deantaylorofficial.com as well. I guess just last thoughts in my mind about transformation. And I think sometime what I felt when I first began this transformation for myself, and what I realized is, I thought it can sound so overwhelming to think, oh, I got to do all these things. I got to fix all these things. And it really just happens one day at a time. And I think there's a compounding effect. When I realized that when I started making a change in one area of my life, it had a ripple effect, and not just that one particular area that I was improving. It was affecting all areas of my life. It was affecting the relationships, affecting my belief about finances, my spirituality, my health. All these areas of my life began to just sort improve as I began to improve and change myself. And I'll share one thing about relationships that I had this thought my wife and I, we celebrated our 32nd anniversary last week. And I had this thought last year about what could I do to improve that relationship? And so I had this thought, well, what if I wrote in a journal every day just something that I admired, appreciated, or was thankful for about my wife that day? And so I spent all of last year writing just a thought about that. And I gave it to her last week for our anniversary. And my point in saying that is being intentional about what I was doing and then thinking about that relationship every day. Yes, having the journal for her is great, but what it did for me and how I viewed that relationship and how it deepened. And I think it was more transformation for me than it probably has been for her to get that gift. Those are some last thoughts I've had.
That is super powerful. What a wonderful gift. Well, I really appreciate you being on the podcast, and I am looking forward. You'll have to tell me when your podcast with your daughter comes out. I'm really looking forward to that, and would be happy to help promote it as well.
Well, thank you. That's great. I appreciate it. And that's just another example of the power of community and connection.
Yeah.
Right? We work together and we build together. So that's awesome. And thank you for letting me be a guest on your show. This is really a privilege and I appreciate it so much.
As we wrap up today's conversation with Dean, here's what I hope you took away. You don't have to wait for permission to start dreaming again. You don't have to keep pushing it through alone. We just heard how Dean went from feeling isolated, burned out, and quietly resigned to a life of good enough to become a purpose-driven speaker, creator, and father who's reconnecting not only to his own dreams, but with his daughters too. And he did it through 3 powerful shifts. He realigned his mornings to start each day with intention. He reached out for support, building a community that mirrored his values. And he rewrote his internal script, letting go of the outdated definition of success that was holding him back. This is the work of season 3, transitioning from self-reliance to strategic support, from trying to do it alone to building relationships and routines that actually move you forward. And this is the heart of Unsealing You, helping you break through internal and external ceilings so that you could show up, speak up, and build the life that reflects your full power and purpose. If you're ready to go deeper, to be seen, supported, and stretched, join us inside the Unsealing Zone. It's where we take the podcast insights and turn them into momentum. The link is in the show notes. So until the next time, keep rising. The ripple has started.